In this lesson, we will look at AAA Framework and VPNs. First, we have authentication and authorization. Authentication is the process of confirming or validating the user's identity to make sure they are who they claim to be, while authorization determines the user's access level or the privilege of the user to the system's resources like files and services. Then it gives or denies access to these resources based on the user's identity. And when it comes to authentication, there are different methods to confirm or verify who the user is. First, it can be something you know, like a password. When you try to log into a website, you're asked for a username and a password. This password is something you know. It might also be a PIN number. The second method is something you have. For example, your credit card or a smart card that opens the doors in a hotel. This card authenticates and opens the door for you. It also only opens the door of your room. You can't use that card to open other rooms. So that's authentication and authorization together. The third method is something you are. This one uses biometrics like fingerprints and face recognition on your phone, for example. You can also use more than one method to authenticate at the same time, like when you log into your Google Gmail account and insert your password, then you insert a verification code that was sent to your phone. Or you might also go to an ATM machine to withdraw money from your bank account, and you need to insert your credit card, which is something you have. Then to access your account, you also need to enter a PIN number, which is associated with your credit card, which is something you know. So using two authentication factors together is called multi-factor authentication. Next, we have centralized authentication, which is basically relying on one system to authenticate users instead of having distributed authentication. Everything is going to be in one place. This helps in simplifying management because you will only manage one system, and also saves time of having to administrate multiple systems. An example of protocols that can be used for centralized authentication is RADIUS. It provides authentication and authorization for the different resources and systems that receive requests from the users, and it works on UDP port 1812. There is also TACACS Plus, which works on TCP port 49, and it's a Cisco proprietary protocol. These two are common security protocols used to provide centralized access in networks. And to see how this works, here we have a client that sends a request for some type of resource, and then the server asks the users for credentials like a username and password. When the user replies with the credentials, the server will send the user's credentials to the RADIUS server to verify them. If the credentials are correct and the user is authorized to access those resources, the RADIUS server replies with an access accept message. Then the server allows the client to access the requested resource. Going back to the AAA framework, it has many processes like controlling the access to the computer resources. It also enforces policy and provides information necessary to bill for services. All these processes are considered important to manage the network and security. And the first process is authentication, which, as we said before, provides a way of identifying a user. So after a user provides his credentials, the AAA server compares the user's authentication credentials with the credentials stored in the database, and if the credentials match, the user is allowed access to the network. If it does not, then authentication fails and the network access is denied. The second A stands for authorization, which we also talked about before. It's the process of enforcing policies, like what privilege the user has and what type of resources or services the user is permitted to use. And the third A stands for accounting. Accounting is basically monitoring the resources consumed by a user during network access. It logs user statistics and usage information like what resources were used or how much and how long was it used for. This collected data could be used for things like resource utilization, capacity planning, auditing, and so on. Next, we have VPNs or virtual private networks. VPNs are used by businesses and organizations to secure the data while it goes through the public internet, because some people might be working remotely and need to connect online. VPNs will create a tunnel that encrypts your information on the public internet so that it's harder for a third party to get your data. There are different types of VPNs like IPsec VPN and SSL VPN. IPsec is used for site-to-site connection and remote access connections. IPsec VPN allows users to connect remotely to an entire network and all its applications. SSL VPN will give the user a remote tunneling access to a specific system or application on the network. Also, when it comes to access method, SSL VPN users can open a secure VPN connection from their web browsers using SSL, while with IPsec, it uses a software VPN client. SSL VPN does not need any software to be installed, and for IPsec, a client VPN software has to be pre-installed for the connection to work.